to any.
That's the truth.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our September regular scheduled meeting of the Clay County Board of Education. We'll go ahead and get things started. I'll start by asking Ms. Reva Beck to read the mission of the Clay County Schools.
The mission of Clay County Schools is to build high-quality learning environments that ensure all students learn at high levels.
Announcements for this meeting. Thank you, Ms. Beck. Announcements for this meeting is this: the regular meeting, which will be held October 25th. I think there's any other announcements that need to be made. So if not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the agenda as it was presented before you and as it was emailed to you.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
And we'll start the night off with some recognitions. We have the high school principal, Mr. Oglin, who's going to recognize.
Jacob, you want to come over here with me?
I'll motion.
So who seconded the motion?
Mr. Paul.
Come on up here. Okay. You have us close in there, Adrian? Do that. All right, good evening, Board of Education, Mr. Cole, and audience. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Jacob Christensen, this young man right here. Jacob is accompanied tonight by his mother, Teresa Christensen, and also his grandmother, Linda Scalzo. We're happy to have you all here also. I want to brag on Jacob just a minute. He has been a stalwart student and a fine young leader for Hayesville High School. A few little things about him. First of all, this young man has never made a grade lower than an A in Hayesville High School. Yeah, it's amazing. And that includes his Hayesville High School classes and his career and college promise courses that he's completed through Tri-County. How many of those have you done now, Jacob?
Probably around 12, maybe.
About 12. And, going into his junior year, he's over halfway to his associate's degree, which we do expect him to get at the same time as his high school diploma, if not before. So that's pretty impressive. Jacob also has completed Microsoft Office Specialist, both the associate level and the expert level. He did both of those in September, which is pretty impressive. Jacob is our drum major for our marching band, again, as a junior. He is our student body president. He was elected by his classmates, by the entire student body, voted Jacob as our student body president as a junior. And we're just so proud of him. One of the things that I noticed about Jacob this year, and I've known him for quite a while, but this year when Mrs. Gibson became ill, we had a substitute teacher in the band room, and that's hard for students to really continue sharpening their skills and getting better as musicians. What Jacob did is he had a Tri-County block where he was taking some college and career classes, and he was staying ahead of it at nighttime, working hard at night, so that he could free up that time during the day to voluntarily, I didn't tell him to do this, I just noticed this kid's always in the band room throughout the day. He was going into the band room on his own to work with the 7th and 8th grade band classes. And, again, that was on his initiative. I was very impressed with him and continue to be with Jacob's leadership this year. So I have two things, and I think, Mr. Cole, you might have something else as well.
I do.
But these are Jacob's Microsoft Office Specialist certificates. This is his associate on September 1st and his expert level on September 14th. Congratulations, young man.
Members of the board and the public watching, I just want to take an opportunity to just say my piece on this. I just happened to notice the same thing, that every time the band was working on something, Jacob was there standing at the front. Obviously, we were going through a tough time as a school district. It is not a simple thing to replace your band director. A substitute teacher can't really do that. Any other teacher on our campus really can't do that, except one that is certified in music. Jacob did not have to do that. He did that voluntarily on his own. So that caused me to ask some questions. And the more I found out about him, the more I realized that Jacob is the best example of what we could want as a Hayesville student. And that is as a result of the work of his parents, his family, his teachers, and I like to think in a small way us and the work that we do here. I was so impressed with him that I really felt like I wanted to write him a letter. So I put together a letter with some input from Dr. Shook, and both Dr. Shook and I signed it because we wanted Jacob to have something to take with him that just said our appreciation for what he is and what he has done as a student in a really difficult time for us. He did this to help his fellow students, the middle school students, and the school district. So, thank you, Jacob. I would ask too, maybe if you can come around and shake the hands of the board members.
Of course. So first of all, I'd just like to start saying, many of y'all see me as a leader, and you can slap a leadership role to anything really, but leadership comes from enjoying what you do. And for some people, it becomes a struggle to enjoy things, but I'm thankful to find the good in everything I do. And whether it's being a leader in the band, a leader in a school, leader of our student body, no matter what it is, I'm able to enjoy what I do, and that's what makes leadership come easy. Because if anything, leadership is just the same thing as I'm doing as everybody else, just in a different way. Because the band students, they work extremely hard. And if I said I did any better than they did, I wouldn't deserve to be standing where I have been standing. Because they work hard, and I want to work hard for them. I want to work hard for y'all. And I also want to work hard for God above. Because I'm thankful that He's blessed me with everything that He has. I know some things may be challenging right now. Didn't expect things to turn out the way they did, especially with a couple weeks ago, things how they were given. But God has His will in everything. I truly, truly believe that. I know for a fact He does. He has shown it time and time again. And I'm thankful that He is allowing me to be a part of His will, to allow to spread His goodness to others in my form of leadership. So I just like to say thank you, Clay County Schools, allowing me to be a leader in today's society going forward. Thank y'all.
I'm so proud of you.
Let's take a picture real quick.
I put on my knee on today.
Kind of scooch right,
What's that?
go a little to your left, there you go. And then back up a little bit. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, young man.
Thank you, Jacob.
Next we have our super substitute teacher recognition, Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Dr. Shook. This is something a little different than what we would normally do during our recognition program. We have not had to shut down any schools so far, and that's a testament to a lot of people's work. But I would say a big part of that has fallen on our substitute teachers. And I have to give credit to Mr. Overland for this one. He came up with this idea. He brought it up at our leadership meeting, just how many of the subs we had that had substituted in our classrooms for more than 10 days in the first 2 weeks of school. Because without these substitute teachers, we would have had to shut down. And, being a substitute teacher, sometimes it's a thankless job. We need as many subs as we can have. That's the reason why we keep it posted all the time on our personnel list as well as bus drivers, because that is also getting hard to fill, and we're going to have to get some more of those. But we wanted to take a moment to recognize, first of all, 9 substitute teachers that have worked 10 or more days up until last Friday. Linda Bond, she worked 18 days during the opening days of school. Taylor Brenna, Emma Champion, Rhonda Curtis worked 17 days. Turner Guidry, Judith Hawkins, Deborah Meeks, Sarah Snowden, and Jeff Vardo. So we would certainly like to thank them. And then we had 4 other substitutes that worked 5+ days. Pam Bradshaw, Grace Birch, Heather Leake, and Pam Patterson. We thank them so much for their willingness to help us. And we're going to get a gift for them as well from the district level. But we just wanted to take a moment to recognize them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cole.
And at this time, if those that were here for recognition, if you want to stay, you can, but if you want to slip out, you can do that as well. That's entirely up to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next, we have a request to address the board in public comment. Just a reminder to each speaker that that is limited to 3 minutes. And typically, according to our policy 2310, board members will not respond to individuals who address the board except to request clarification of points made by the presenter. First off, we have Mr. Jim Johnson.
Well, good evening. I want to thank the board for allowing me to speak tonight. At the July 2021 school board meeting, I gave a presentation that identified 3 areas of concern for the board's consideration. They were first, the newly revised North Carolina K-12 social studies standards and U.S. history standards. Second, the forthcoming curriculum still under development for these subjects and their implementation into Clay County schools. And third, the introduction of critical race theory into our schools. All 3 of these items are still a concern of mine, a good many people within this county, and I hope a concern for the members of this board as well. The other item presented was a recommendation for the board to adopt a non-discrimination resolution modeled after one adopted by the Pbis County School Board. Instead of considering locally the resolution based upon its merits, I was disappointed to learn that its fate was tied to North Carolina House Bill 324, Ensuring Dignity and Non-Discrimination in Schools Act, in essence passing the buck and awaiting a political decision. A decision that was already a foregone conclusion as HB 324 was passed along party lines in the legislature and was destined to be vetoed by the governor. Although it is appropriate for the legislature to debate HB 324 at the state level, the Pbis County resolution should have never been tied to HB 324 and should have been decided here in Clay County with a simple yes or no vote by this school board. With that in mind, I respectfully ask the board members again, will you support the following resolution? 1, that one race or sex is not inherently superior to another race or sex. 2, that an individual solely by virtue of his or her race or sex is not inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. 3, that an individual should not be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her race or sex. 4, that an individual's moral character is not determined by his or her race or sex. 5, that no individual solely by virtue of his or her race or sex bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. 6, that no individual solely by virtue of his or her race or sex should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress. 7, that the United States comprises persons that are all created equally. Moving on to another subject, I'd like to recommend that the flag of the United States be presented at all future school board meetings, and the school board open its meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for your attention and your consideration. What are your questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Is there, would maybe ask if there has been any, maybe like, have you, I know because you're representing a group, correct? Or just, obviously you're.
I'm concerned about this issue, and a number of people in the county are, yes.
People are, so, so I guess maybe my question would be, have you or your group received or heard any complaints about, I guess, sort of discriminatory or indoctrination things being taught by teachers in Clay County schools, or maybe if Mr. Cole or one of the principals have anything complaints about that? Have they received complaints about that? And I would even ask, like, with this resolution, I know Pbis County obviously has adopted this, but other school systems that have adopted it, or anything in the Western Regional that has been adopted like this as well?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, it's the first question.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me answer that. I am not aware of any instance in Clay County schools where critical race theory has been taught, either officially or unofficially. But I am concerned because it has come into the North Carolina school system. It is being taught, I know for sure, in Wake County and Mecklenburg County. There are online seminars that teachers can go to and receive instruction. Some of those teachers have been instructed to keep what they're teaching from parents and maybe other members of the staff. And so from that concern, I am concerned. But I have not seen anything up to this point that indicates. But I would recommend to parents that they be looking in the school bags of their students when they come home and be talking to their students when they come home and see if any elements of critical race theory have been introduced to them in their classes. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you.
Yes.
And part of that was for me. I have not received any complaints to that effect about Clay County schools, nor have I observed anything like that in classes. I feel sure if the principals had, they would have let me know. We've got 3 of them here. I'm not seeing anyone stepping up to give me any. No, okay, so I would say not. So I think what we're looking for here is some kind of proactive measure.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not here to cause trouble, believe me. I'm just here to raise the red flag.
Right.
Hopefully, no one rallies around that flag, but I do want not only the board, but the public in general to be aware of the possibility that these things could enter into our school system.
Is that okay? So we have had and are continuing to have, as a matter of fact, as of Friday, Dale and I spoke with the attorney again through a Zoom meeting / phone conference as well about these resolutions. So that's something that is an ongoing conversation.
As far as the last question, I'm only aware of 3 school systems that have adopted something like this. So Pbis being one, Yancey County being another, and Wayne County out east. Although Wayne County's wasn't exactly like this. It was sort of like this.
I think this just raises the issue and lets people know that we're concerned about these things. We don't see them, but we're concerned about these things, and these things would not be appropriate in Clay County schools.
And I would close that, board members, with just obviously the only thing we have to be careful of is that we don't adopt something that puts us in conflict with the North Carolina state standards. That's the only thing, because we're required by law to teach North Carolina state standards, and 80% of our funding comes from the state. And so we just have to keep that in mind. And as you deliberate this, just keep that in mind, that we would need to work with our board attorney, if you were interested in something like this, to come up with something that we could make work. That's all I would say.
I would believe that a simple reading of this resolution would more than satisfy the issue of it being an issue with the State Board of Education. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's pretty simple. You don't have to be a Harvard lawyer to read through it and understand it.
Any other questions or comments? Everybody good?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Mr. George Elbert.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, what's your last name?
ELV as in Victor, ER. I'm going to start by saying that I'm going to cut a portion of mine out because he said it a lot better. I would like to add that I noticed the concern that if it goes against North Carolina standards, but I have to say the stuff in his resolution, if they're going to teach stuff that would go against that, it shouldn't be a standard in the first place, because that would just be ridiculous. I mean, it goes against everything that I believe America stands for, so why would we be teaching it? So I definitely support that motion. My name is George Elbert, as we already got that far. I'm resident of Clay County. My child goes to the school system here. I want to start by saying that I know that, you don't want to answer questions. I still, as part of mine, there are some questions in it. So when I was looking at the latest numbers that were released on the Facebook page in reference to the COVID-19 number of students out, I believe the total current number of students out with positive were 14, and yet there is currently 177 students quarantined. That's roughly, if my math is right, it's something like 12.6 students quarantined for every one positive student. I'd love to hear at what the point of ignoring parents' rights and forcing the children to wear the obedience mask is when so many are being quarantined anyways for one. Because I believe the whole purpose of that was to keep the number down, and I can't imagine 12 for every one kid. I do have a couple thoughts on that. It's my understanding that some of the kids in the high school have figured out that if they become exposed and they claim many of their friends were in close circles with them, that they get quarantined and get to go fishing together and other social gatherings. I would be interested in seeing from the data that we get like this, more of a breakdown as far as per each school, how many kids have, like say in the elementary school, how many have COVID versus how many are quarantined in that school, to see if those numbers would reflect that. I know some of our counties nearby, including Cherokee County, when they put their list out, does it by school like that. So I'd be interested in seeing something like that. I also know that one of my child's friend in the middle school was out for a family issue, and without any cause was informed that she was quarantined and could not return to school. So without any exposure and without being at school, she was put on the quarantine list. I've also heard it said that the board is following the Department of Health's recommendations, and they are following the CDC's recommendations. My question on that is, why do we need you? What is the purpose of creating a vote if our actions or your actions are already determined by another entity? I don't ask this to be rude or insulting. I ask this because you're elected by us, the citizens. And if the people that we elect do not have the ability to make decisions on the issues that are important to us, then obviously there needs to be a change somewhere. The next part of that goes into the CRT, which I've already said I'm not going to speak on because he did it so much better. I think I have a little bit more time, so I will say I'm completely against anything that would teach an ideology or a division of hate. And I think that it would be bad for our children and for our country as a whole. So thank you for letting me speak. That's it.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Elder? Thank you, Mr. Elder. And that is the last of the public comments. So we'll move on into the report section of the agenda, and we'll start with the new finance procedures. Mr. Cole's going to do that. Yes. I'm getting ready to do several things, I think.
Members of the board, just first of all, in reporting in your Google Drive, I did share with you some new finance procedures that will align with policies that the board has already approved. All of these are aligned with the North Carolina School Boards Association. Essentially, for each of these finance policies, 8210, 8305, all three of those that deal with federal programs, grants, 8325, 8350, and 9120. All of those policies are already in place, and the superintendent is required to come up with procedures in order to manage the policies that the board has already approved. I've just reporting that I have shared those with you for you to read in your Google Drive. And what I'll be working with Ms. Hollingsworth and Ms. Owens later on this week to just kind of plug in Clay County schools and different things into those regulations so that we can then attach them to the policies. So on our online policy handbook, for anyone in the public to be able to go to read after that, they'll be able to read the finance policy, and then underneath that they can read the procedures we use to manage that policy. So I just wanted to make you aware of that so that you could read over it if you wish. It's not an action because the board doesn't have to approve procedures, just the policies. But we were already doing most of these regulations. It was just not formally in writing in our policy handbook, and we need to have it there in writing. So as you look at those this upcoming month, if you have any questions, just let me know. Or if you have any questions now. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll go into the second, number 9 on the agenda, facilities and maintenance report from July 1 to September 24th, which was Friday. You have a handout in your folder that says accomplishments since July 1st. I just thought it important to share that our maintenance department has been working extremely hard, just as hard as everybody else. Anyone in the business sector right now can tell you that it is really hard to get parts and supplies and materials. It seems like everything in the world is back ordered, which means if you don't have the supplies that you need, then the people you have to find other ways of making it all work. And our maintenance department has been excellent in that regard. Our director, Steve Livers, our administrative assistant, Larissa Odell, Jason Elliott, Aiden Sanchez, and Rocky Neal. I can't say enough good things about them. They've been doing great. I wanted to just kind of give you a list that you could take a look at. I'm not going to read all of these, but one thing they did was convert one of our mobile units, one of the trailers, into a severe and profound EC classroom over the summer because of we had a large number of our EC students at the primary school moved up to 3rd grade, and so that made a need up here for us to have 2 severe and profound classrooms on the main campus. So they installed new floors, repainted the walls, and installed a new sink and cabinets, as well as put new roofs on all 4 of the trailers because those things have been there for about 20 years now, and they were getting in pretty bad shape. So they were able to accomplish that. We moved the K-5 art classroom into the kindergarten pod. And art and elementary art does not go well with carpet. So we decided that we needed to pull up the carpet and put down some new tile floor. They were able to accomplish that. The HMS gym has been pretty much completely redone. At this point, they've repainted the weight room, washed and cleaned all of the flooring mats, installed LVP tile in all of the foyers and in the concession stand and coaches' offices. Reframed and repaired all of the dressing room doors. They added cabinets in the concession stand. We also installed a brand new basketball court floor because the one we had was down to the screws, and the guy told us that there will be no more sanding on that floor. So it was time to install a new one. Work in progress. We're having a custom trophy case built that will be installed this month. We have a new back door and frame that are going to be installed, and we're also going to be installing central air conditioning for the first time in the middle school gym. We'll have some AC, and we're providing that with some of our ESSER funds in order to improve air quality in the gym. At the middle school, we added a nursing station, repainted every hallway and classroom, repaired and repainted all of the ceilings and walls, repainted all the door jambs. And the next step is going to be removing all of the carpet, which at the middle school is wall to wall, and replacing that with LVP tile that'll look just like the tile we have at the primary school. That's going to help us clean better, disinfect better. It'll remove smell, mold, mildew, and I can't imagine how much dirt is underneath that carpet, but I think probably about half of that courtyard out there is probably underneath that carpet in the middle school, and I'm hoping we can get all that cleaned up pretty soon. You can go through and read the rest, but it's a tremendous amount of work that has been done in just those few months. Some future jobs that we are considering. One is burning the 3 unoccupied structures here that we own on School Drive. The first one is being burned tonight. It probably already started. So that one will be the one right on the corner. And then they're going to take care of the other 2 houses over the next 2 months. So that saves us the money of having to demo them and carry it off, and gives the fire department some training. We're going to be completing another auction. I don't think it's going to be October 15th. I think we're going to move it to the 22nd. I think we're going to need an additional week. We're going to be working to replace the boilers in the high school gym and the central office, both of which have been in use since 1972 and are due to quit at any moment. The boiler in the cafe has been in use since 1975. We plan to replace these using ESSER funds, again to improve air quality with more energy efficient propane boilers. We're going to remove and replace the Hayesville High School basement HVAC system with individual room units. That will allow teachers to control the AC in their own classrooms in the basement. The basement has always been a problem because of mold and mildew. Those units do a much better job of pulling the humidity out of the air before blowing it in, which should go a long ways to solving that problem. We need to replace the AC unit. We just fixed it because a board went out. You know, an AC unit and a boiler, they're kind of like your car. Like once the expensive stuff starts breaking, you need to start looking for another car because it's going to keep breaking. So we're going to be working on that, as well as moving the AC units. The chillers are currently in the ceiling of the gym, which is a really bad idea. I don't know why it's that way, but we're going to look at a way to move the chiller units out of the gym and to the outside, which should quiet that gym down a lot for events and that sort of thing. And it'll also allow us to eliminate all of the condensation damage we have to the finish of the floor, because you can't keep a chiller from dripping. It just drips all the time. So we're hopeful to get that accomplished as well. You can read over the rest. The last thing would just be, we just completed the project of this back parking lot, which has been a great help as far as parking. You know, we lack, the elementary school teachers have never had their own parking lot. So they've had to kind of park on all over the campus and make their way. So now they have their own 25 spaces here in the bus lot, separated from the buses, so that's going to be a tremendous help. The last thing we're going to do is just install a fence right along that slope line in case somebody gets out of their car and forgets to put it in gear, which happens, believe it or not. So thank your maintenance guys if you get a chance, if you see them somewhere. They're doing great work.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Sir.
I'll just let you continue on there if you don't mind.
Yes. So next, we have a PowerPoint for this. State exam results from 2020-2021. Obviously, the pandemic had an impact across the state. Not one school district in the state remained the same or got better in their proficiency scores from 2018-19, which was the last time we had state scores without a pandemic happening. Everybody went down as a district. Now, what I wanted to do was we got this information last week from DPI, and I was kind of going through and sorting through the data, and I saw some things that I felt like we should be proud of. I sent an email out to the staff about this, and I told them, you know, it's the proudest I've ever been at a 15% proficiency drop. Normally, I'd be bouncing off the walls about that, but in the situation that we're in, I think when you look at us in comparison to everyone else, you'll see what I'm talking about. So just quickly, Hayesville Elementary School, I put together some comparison data. Now, this isn't exactly apples to apples because some of our schools in the mountains are pre-K through 12 in one building. I put those in with the high schools. Some of our schools are pre-K through 8. I put those in with the elementary schools, and I just left the middle schools as just the true grade 6 through 8 middle schools for a comparison. So when we look at the elementary schools, obviously there are always going to be more elementary schools than there are middle and high schools. They tend to be community schools. But when you compare the score change in overall proficiency for students between 18-19 and 2021, The highlighted area is Hayesville Elementary School. Now remember, at this time, we were kind of in the process of dividing schools as well. But Hayesville Elementary School dropped 11.6%, which normally I would be freaking out about. However, that put us in 5th place in the West as far as elementary schools. And I didn't really count up exactly how many there are, but there's a lot more than 5. So although we lost some ground, we expected to, we did not lose as much ground as almost everyone else. There were 4 ahead of us. Next, we'll look at the elementary school. The elementary school lost 9.8% in proficiency. However, that was less than any of the other middle schools, the true middle schools, grades 6 through 8. So we were actually tops as far as those true middle schools. Hayesville High School finished up in 3rd. They lost 8 percentage points of proficiency. Kudos to Murphy High School. They only lost 1%. That's outstanding. I'm going to get on the phone with the principal there and find out how she did that. That was great work. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due, but I think we deserve some credit as well. We were top 3 out of the high schools. And then the last slide is just Clay County Schools overall. This is a comparison with our district numbers. So overall, our district lost 15% in proficiency between those 2 years. But that put us 2nd place behind Haywood County Schools over that same time frame, who was they dropped 13%. So in 1819, this is just some notes I put in over on the left-hand side of the slide. In 2018-2019, our overall proficiency, we were 9th out of 12 of the districts in RESA, in the Western region. We were exactly at the state average for North Carolina in proficiency. We had the exact same average. In 2021, we moved up to 4th out of 12. We were 5.4% above the state average, and we had the 2nd lowest proficiency drop overall. I do not know what that is, but it's not in our building. Oh, it's the fire truck. That's right. There you go. I forgot about that. All right. So I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes when you look at data, it says something different than what you initially see. I think, our board worked very hard last year, really just overall, to get kids back in school as soon as possible and push the envelope on having kids back in school face-to-face as much as we could. Now, granted, most of that time has been, all of that time has been with a mask mandate. But that's what allowed us to get them back in school sooner, because we put the priority, or you guys put the priority on face-to-face instruction, which we knew all along was going to far outperform virtual instruction. And that proved out. And I think because of those decisions, that made a big difference, because a lot of those other districts had a lot more virtual instruction than we did. And I think that made the difference. That and the hard work of our principals and our teachers and our parents. It is not as easy as it sounds to be a learning coach for your own children at home. And so in order to have our students, when they were virtual, to be able to get their work done, it took a lot of work by parents and grandparents as well. So I just wanted to point that out. Any questions?
Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cole, were you going to discuss the ESSER funding for the additional pay?
Yes, I was. Just real quick, again, this was something related to this, that it doesn't require board approval because we had already approved the ESSER plans that gave the district and me some flexibility. So when we surveyed our teachers on what was hard about right now, I think the board and I heard loud and clear that it was, again, teaching students face-to-face while at the same time teaching students that were home virtually due to quarantine. They were appreciative that they were not required to teach the fully remote kids that were going to be remote for the remainder of this semester. But obviously, due to the Delta variant, we've had a lot more quarantines than we ever had last year because of the difference in contagion. So we took another look at our ESSER plan And what we came up with was the ability to carve out some space in the budget to pay our teachers for 2 hours a week at $25 an hour after school, so outside of the school day, to just work on providing instruction to quarantined remote students. That could be calling them, video conferencing with them, actually creating lesson plan activities for them, any work that they needed to do for those quarantined students. They were really having to do it anyway outside of their regular work day. So this was a way for us to try to pay them over the next month 2 hours per week for 4 weeks for all of our teachers to be able to just work on outside of the school day for quarantined students. That came up to right at $26,000 out of our budget to be able to do that. So we cut something so that we could add that because that was the biggest teacher need from their own voices. This is optional. They don't have to do this. If they choose not to, then it's not required. Each principal is putting together their own plan for implementing that this week and keeping track. Basically, they're just doing a timesheet with those teachers so that can be turned into Shelley and we can cut them a check at the end of the month. Any questions about that?
Sorry.
Nope.
You were saying that's going to be implemented this week?
It started this week.
This week.
Yes. So for 4 total weeks. We're hoping that after 4 weeks, maybe the way our numbers are looking, things are starting to look better, like we might have turned the corner. But we can always reevaluate at the end of the 4 weeks if we need to.
Very good.
All right. Thank you, Angel.
Thank you. Next, we have the district MTSS and implementation plan, and Ms. Heather Clemens is going to be doing that.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here again tonight. I know that MTSS is becoming part of our common language. I think that, we talked about it a couple of years ago. It was new. We didn't really understand what all that entailed. So I just wanted to give you an update. Yes, sir.
What does MTSS stand for?
Multi-tiered System of Support. Thank you.
I'm betting not everybody knew
Maybe
that.
not everybody, yes. I think probably the board is there, though. So that means that we are creating a structure to support all students at every level by providing appropriate interventions. And I'll discuss that a little bit as we go with academics, social, emotional, and behavioral supports. So I was going to recap a little bit about where we've been. I can't really barely see the slides here. Sorry. So over the past couple of years, we've been working on district level work where we had a team of administrators, principals in the district level working through some modules so that we would understand what it entailed, working on creating some structure, some things that would make things that we could implement across every school that would provide some supports. For example, like an attendance policy, we revamped that so that we had just a little bit cleaner policy overall, and we also put some supports in place for that with like the early intervention team, so that when we did have students who had major attendance issues, we had somewhere to go with that. And so this is not about a punishment or anything like that at all. It's really about catching kids where they are, supporting them, providing appropriate academic interventions to get them on grade level with their peers. So we established a method for all certified staff to collectively work through some modules that the DPI puts out for us to do. There are 3 of them altogether. And we also created a common planning and procedure document to kind of guide us as we go in our work. So overall, what we've accomplished so far is that all of our certified teachers have completed at least module 1 of the MTSS modules that are provided by DPI. The work was done through our PLCs, which is professional learning communities in the schools, and that really gave us common language. It gave us an understanding of what core instruction means and the necessity of common assessments for monitoring progress and the need for standard interventions. So previously, we had teachers or schools or teams of teachers doing one thing, but you may have another team of teachers we're all teaching the same standards, but we might be using a different curriculum, or we might be assessing that differently. And so if you've got one teacher assessing using iReady and another one using something completely different, you're comparing apples and oranges, and it's really hard to tell where your overall growth is with your teachers. So it's given us that better understanding of, like, we've got to be using the same type of curriculum, same instructional methods, assessing kids with the same common assessment tools, and then applying appropriate interventions. And that's still kind of where we are right now, but I feel like we've made a lot of growth. All right, Adrian, you can. So what we have done, and this has been the work that we've started this year, and I so appreciate the board allowing us to do this, we have created a teaming structure of leadership roles within our district. So now we have a district team. So we have a district lead for MTSS, which is the academic piece, and that is me. We have a district social emotional learning person to head that up, and that's Emily Hedden. And then we have Pbis, which is our behavior plan, positive behavior intervention system, and that is Melissa Cheek. So we have the three of us and Mr. Cole to kind of create the district level, and then under that we have school level roles in each of those. You can go on to the next slide, and that will have an example of those. So these are the individuals who serve in those roles in each of our schools. So the primary, elementary, middle, and high school, and so the principal is always considered to be a collective part of that MTSS team at the school. We have an MTSS person, SEL, and a Pbis person or people at each level in each school. This has been wonderful for me as the district MTSS lead to be able to have a better avenue to get information out and to also share some responsibilities, because it is overwhelming when you try to think, well, let's just do MTSS. Well, it's such a big thing in and of itself. Now we've broken it down, and people who really have a lot of background knowledge in SEL are leading that. So those are the folks who are creating this social emotional learning support system in each school, but then they're also collectively working with each other to make sure that we are congruent with that at our district, so that we mirror each other, even though what I might do with my littles at the primary school might look a little bit different than what Mr. Overland does for social emotional support. Regardless, all kids have social emotional needs, and so we're finding ways to meet those needs collectively. So with those roles and that teaming structure, everybody has roles and expectations, so we have defined those. So at the district level, we work on district-wide initiatives such as code of conduct, which our Pbis folks helped with that, attendance policies, etc. We have a yearly agenda, so we keep everybody on track. And we update our CCS district MTSS plan and procedure document. So as we get more information, it's a living document. It's something we're constantly building into. And then we meet monthly to coordinate those district initiatives. So I've just broken down a little, I won't go through all of this for you, but at the school level MTSS leaders are facilitating the MTSS team. They're making sure that our staff is staying on schedule with our training modules, and they are driving the development, this is the big one, of the development of core practices and tier 1, tier 3 interventions for academics, math, and reading. And then they are also going to become some of our trainers for some other programs that exist out there that merge in with Power School. The Pbis leaders, they are working on a core behavior framework. I'm going to talk about what we've done in the primary school here in just a minute. An intensive system that's integrating academic and behavior instruction as well as SEL support. So behavior usually is reflected, it's going to come out in all those different avenues. If a kid is struggling academically, there's a very good chance that there's some behavior issues going on there as well, so they can help provide interventions so that we can overcome those hurdles to get the kid back in class and back to learning, because that's our goal. And then we also have created a framework for rewards and consequences. And then SEL, They are driving our SEL curriculum. We are implementing the Rhythm app, the DESA screener. Those are some of those other buzzwords that you guys have heard, but these are the people who will help ensure that those are put into place appropriately in each of our schools, training our staff in those. They also use that data to determine if students need additional supports with social emotional learning. So just wanted to give you a couple of examples, some things that are going on, because like we can talk about what it means and what it might look like as a structure, but to really see what we're doing, I feel like that's the important piece. So I just wanted to, I can brag on my own for a little bit, right? So at the primary school, we have come up with our a Pbis framework for students. And so we have posters made. So we have be respectful, be safe, be responsible, and be a learner. Those are our 4 main ideas. And so then we have just 3 simple rules that go with those in the appropriate locations. So for be safe, there will be 3 rules. Those are posted at the playground that's in kid-friendly language. Being a learner in the classroom, what are the 3 things? So, and we have all this already ready to go. I think it's even like already been printed. I'm excited to see it. So this really didn't eliminate, it just put together all those little rules that teachers may have for their classrooms, and it put it all together in one place. Now, these overlying themes would also work at any of the other schools. I mean, high school students can be safe, be respectful, be responsible, and be a learner. It might look a little bit different than it does, in a primary school cafeteria than it does for him at the high school, but it's still the same ideas. So that's one of the things that work. And we also have an incentive-based school store that we're using. Kids can earn tickets and they get to go to the special school store on Fridays to get something if they have had positive behavior through the week. And another thing that we have going on, Pbis Raxter is my instructional coach, and she is working on a common framework of interventions for academics. She's created a live binder, which if you're not familiar with that, it's basically an interactive, it's a website. And so we have this database of interventions that we can go to that we are training our teachers on through PLCs, and we're providing that support to them each day. I had added another slide, I don't know if it added on or not, about the high school. No, I added it too late. But I can tell you about it. I met with the MTSS team today, and I love what the high school is doing for their MTSS support. Erin McCoy is the MTSS lead there, and she was talking about how they're providing that at the high school, because it does look different in a high school setting. They're having monthly meetings. We call ours care team, and theirs are just their MTSS meetings. It's okay. You don't have to be as creative. But they are collecting data, so all the teachers, with whatever content they're teaching, are using SchoolNet, which is a common assessment tool that's provided to us through the Power School. And so they have at least a 10-question set of data collection piece each week, and so then they bring that to their MTSS team to discuss concerns. It's very much like what we're doing. We're just using like iReady data or M-Class data at primary and elementary. They also have a thumbs up, thumbs down meeting day where they discuss social emotional concerns that they have with their students. The teachers are providing interventions in the classroom, but they are documenting that in a common document. So they're building this huge database of interventions that they can go to at their next step and determine, okay, well, what really is a tier 1 intervention, a tier 2 interventions. Our motto, primary school and our PLCs, is when we know better, we do better. And I think that's where we're all headed. We're on a different pace, but we're all going in the same direction. So I was really excited after talking to Erin and Pbis today in our meeting to see what everybody's doing and to see how this is coming together. So do you guys have any questions for me about MTSS?
Questions or comments?
It seems that the curriculum that was adopted is being implemented and a part of this.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up that point.
Social emotional learning.
Absolutely, social emotional and the academics, both of those are common that's one of the places that you really have to start. You have to use that common curriculum so that you can get common measurements for their data, for their outcome data. So yes, we are definitely using all of that. So I told Mr. Cole the other day, this is the most excited I've been about MTSS this entire time, because I feel like we are finally in the doing phase instead of just the learning and the planning.
So it's been a long process, but obviously it looks like it's headed in the right direction.
It has. I think
It's a savage beast, but we're going to tame it.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're doing it. There's a lot of undertakings.
Yeah, I think that the teachers, finally, we're all getting that common language and getting that better understanding of the necessity of it, and I think that's where we're going to see the greatest gain. So,
Well, thank you all for taking on that role and doing that.
absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Angel Owens, recommendation for this is the action agenda, correct? And this is the action part of the agenda. So Ms. Owens will be presenting the 2021-2022 federal programs plan.
Okay. Hi. So this application is due this week. We've been working on this since the spring, trying to work out how we could best use this funding to serve our students and prepare our teachers to better serve our students. All 4 of these funding options are in one large consolidated application, and they all just mesh together to make things happen within our district. So there is a handout for all of you that has all the exact same information. Title I, PRC 50 is our Title I. The funding available, this is including our carryover from last year, is $449,407.10. This has some set-asides that are taken into account before we divide it between the 2 schools that are funded this way. So $84,759 are the preschool set-asides. That pays 30% of 4 preschool teachers' salaries and benefits. So this makes our preschool a total school program. So instead of it being a targeted assistance program, it's a school-wide program under the Title I classification. So then we have $9,668 as a parent involvement set aside. 5% of the parent involvement coordinator salary is for HPS and 5% is for HES. We have $7,232 for neglected and delinquent students. This is a required set aside by the state. We do not have neglected and delinquent facilities in our district, but we are still required. They send me the number and tell me we have to set that aside each year, just in case. And then administrative costs, we have $1,605. And then for homeless, we have a $400 required set aside. That's 1 per pupil allotment in case we need that for homeless students. We're fortunate to have our Clay County Community for Students. They do everything for anything we need for any student, regardless of them being homeless or not. And historically, they've taken care of every need we have for our homeless students. We do have homeless students in our district, unfortunately, and that doesn't mean they live in a car or anything. They might just be what we call couch surfing at a friend's house or something like that. Salary and benefits that are funded through Title I, we pay at Hayesville Primary School, which gets 57.2% of the funds based on their enrollment. We pay 100% of the salaries and benefits for 3 teachers in grades kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd. And we pay 45% of the salary and benefits paid for an additional kindergarten teacher because we had to add on classrooms this year. At Hayesville Elementary, they get 42.8% of the funds based on their enrollment. We pay 100% of the salaries and benefits for 2 of their teachers in grades 4th and 5th, and we pay 80% of the salary and benefits for 1 teacher in grade 3. They also had to have an additional classroom. And there's also indirect costs included in the Title I. So any questions about Title I? Okay, for Title II, PRC 103, this is supporting effective instruction. This is a lot of PD funding that we use. Right now we have $115,309.49. That is including carryover. This past summer, we asked some teachers to come in for the school improvement team meetings, and we paid them stipends to come in because we really needed those teams to come in before the school year started. You want a school improvement plan going before the school year starts. So we paid stipends for that. We are paying mentor stipends for our beginning teachers to have good, experienced mentors. The state used to pay these mentors, but they no longer fund that, and so we brought this back last year, and it's been a good way to get additional mentors involved. We have district and school coordinator stipends for our NTSS that Ms. Clemens just talked about, our PBIS, and our social emotional learning, SEL. We have 3 district and 4 school level for each of those. So we have workshop expenses, that's including registration, lodging, meals, and travel for anything we ask our teachers to go to, or if we host it on campus. And then we have certification and licensing fees, contracted leadership coach, Mr. Knuckles coming in to help because we have so many new administrators in our district this year. And then, of course, indirected costs. Any questions on Title II? All right, Title IV, PRC 108 is our Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant. Right now we have $30,122,000.15. This is going to pay for our behavior tracking software for all the schools, social emotional curriculum for K through 8, the social emotional data app, the Rhythm app that we adopted, the K through 5 intervention curriculum and professional development for administering that curriculum, the Pbis signage that Ms. Clemens was talking about, and indirect costs. Any questions on Title IV? And then last we have RLIS, PRC 109, that is our rural low-income schools. This is split between the primary and the elementary schools. There's $41,437.12 total, including carryover. And right now the use of funding is regular curriculum supplies and materials. Split fund, we have 57.2% for the primary at $23,166.03 and 42.8% for the elementary school at $17,038.81 plus indirect costs. Any questions? And I'm asking for your approval of this plan so that we can submit the application in the morning. 2 days early.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Owens. Any questions or comments? If not,
I do
go
have.
ahead.
Angel, so on the carryover stuff, all this funding, if it's not used, we're able to carry it over each year. Is that what?
We have to encumber it by September 9th, September 30th. We have to spend it by December 31st.
Gotcha.
So it has to be in link in our financial system by September 30th. We have to have paid it out
By December. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just for carryover.
Just for the carryover portion.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the federal consolidated application for Titles 1, 2, 4, and RLS.
I make a motion.
Mr. Jones. Ms. Beck, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And next, we have the recommendation for approval regarding the MOU with the Western North Carolina Youth Aviation Foundation.
Members of the board, we've been working, for several months now with the Western Carolina Youth Aviation Foundation Board to come up with an MOU of how we're going to use the funds and real property that were donated in the past for the Hayesville High School Aviation Program, which we no longer have. I think we've got something here that I feel like we're going to be able to approve. I will tell you that Mr. David Hortequin, who works as the secretary for the Youth Aviation Foundation Board, he has a copy of this that he is sharing with his board. Of course, they're kind of scattered around now, but they expect to meet at some point this month to vote on this. Certainly, essentially what it says is that we are going to use the funds in our aviation program account, which right now is $45,942.08 to pay for students to be able to have flight lessons with flight instructors approved by the Youth Aviation Foundation until those funds run out, however long that takes. We are going to fund, they've got it split up into a phase 1 and a phase 2 for training. We will use those funds to pay for training for both phase 1 and phase 2 for any student that lives in Clay County. As long as they attend Hayesville High School or Tri-County Early College High School. Because now Tri-County Early College High School, they have an aviation program. And so that's essentially what this MOU says. you can vote to approve this tonight. And if the board of the Youth Aviation Foundation for some reason decides not to approve theirs and they want to make some additional changes, then they will send those to me and we'll work on it again. Or you could choose not to vote on this tonight and just kind of leave it and wait and see what the Youth Aviation Board does, and we could revisit it next board meeting. That is the pleasure of the board. So that's up to you.
So I know everybody's had a copy of that in their email. We've looked at that several different times. So any discussion, we want to use this as a first read of that and wait and see what the Youth Aviation Foundation does, or do we want to go ahead and approve this, assuming that they're going to approve it as it is? And they've looked at this one as well already, been back and forth.
Yes, yes, they've already had input and feedback on this document. That's the reason why I'm assuming, unless somebody comes up with something different in the next couple of weeks, that they're going to approve this. But of course, you never know what happens at a board meeting. So.
And Mr. Cole, you did state that if we approve this tonight, then if their board comes back and says no, we can just kind of retract it and then just work on it. And
both boards have to sign off on this MOU. So whether we approve it or not, if they want changes and they're not willing to approve it yet and sign off on it, then we'll just have to decide if we're willing to make those changes or not, and we'll continue to work on it.
okay.
It's just, if I would say that if I'm recommending this for approval tonight, if y'all are okay with what's in the document, just because then if their board approves it, we're done. And if they don't, we can always come back and revisit it.
So I mean, it would be nice to get this.
I think so.
finalized.
I'm ready to put it
It's
to
been-
bed and
yeah,
have it in writing, and yes.
It's been going on for a while, so. Any questions or comments, or does anybody want to make a motion that this be approved, or make a motion that it be a first read? I'll entertain either of those motions.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and entertain approval.
Okay. So Mr. Caldwell has made a motion for approval. Mr. Jones has seconded. All in favor? Very good. Thank you. Next is the kitchen scholarship.
Yes, recommendation to approve the use of the kitchen scholarship donation to pay for college and career promise student textbooks. So I guess just first of all, one access issue we have at Hayesville High School for career and college promise classes. So when I say CCP, I mean Career and College Promise, which is the program that the North Carolina General Assembly approved, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, that allows us to use tax dollars to pay for high school students to take community college classes in their 11th and 12th grade year if they qualify. However, what it does not do, it does not authorize us to use those funds to pay for textbooks as well as other materials that students may need in order to be able to take those classes. For example, we can pay for student enrollment in a career technical education course at Tri-County Community College, for example, in welding. But we cannot pay for their welding helmet or their welding gloves, which they need in order to take the course. The regular, I think, Tri-County students may have to pay for that equipment, and if that's the case, then our kids have to. Which, if our kids can't afford it, then they really don't have access to those courses in their 11th and 12th grade year. So a need that we have is to be able to pay for these materials so that we can truly say that any kid at Hayesville High School that qualifies for a community college course through the assessment that they give to decide on qualification, that they truly can take those courses if they want. There's no obstacle to that. But we just haven't had the funding to be able to do that. We have a donation. These funds were received in January of 2020 in the amount of $116,953 from the estate of Joe A. Kitchens to establish the Ben and Octa Kitchens Scholarship Program. The Kitchens family established contact with the Hayesville High School principal back in 2006 regarding the intent of the establishment of the scholarship once the last survivor of the estate passed. So the first that Hayesville High School heard about this was in 2006. The family contacted the principal at the time, said there's one remaining member of the family that has this estate. When they pass, it is their intention that whatever's left of these funds should go to Hayesville High School for a scholarship program. That happened in 2020, in January of 2020. The problem is there were no specific details about what kind of scholarship or anything beyond just a scholarship. So in the meantime, Ms. Hollingsworth has worked to get in touch with a personal representative or a family member to help us determine maybe some more details on what they wanted the award criteria to be. But we've been unable since January of 2020 to get in touch with anyone. We just received a check. And we've been unable to get in touch with anyone from the family to get any additional details. So obviously that money's been sitting there some time now. This is just an idea that I decided to recommend to the board. Again, this is one of these things that the board can take action on tonight. If you choose not to make a motion or to vote, then it can go on the back burner and we can discuss it further at the next board meeting. But one way that we could use this money is that we could set up a partnership with Tri-County Community College where we would cut a check out of this donation to the college to pay for any books and materials for Hayesville High School students that are taking community college courses until the funds run out. In my mind, that is a scholarship. They are in fact going to college. This would remove the access issue until these funds ran out. So it's a thought, it's a recommendation that I'm making, and I leave it up to the board on whether you want to take action on that or if you want to think about it further.
Any thoughts on this? Questions, comments?
Yes, Mr. Cole, I feel like what you suggested is absolutely a wonderful idea. This is something that it seems that these funds could be used. However, I would really like to put this aside until next month so that we can explore just a little bit more of this, the details in this, so that we can be absolutely sure that we cannot reach a family member. And I say that because so many people in this community are directly related to the Kitchens family. And I feel like that we can find somewhere, or at least, I think we should try one more time and let's, pursue this next month, because I feel like what you're saying is a very, very good idea.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Mr. Cole.
Mr. Chairman, I like the idea too, Mr. Cole. I think it's a great idea, but since we are online or on YouTube, I guess, it'll at least give us a month for someone maybe to see the meeting and notify a family member or something. It's maybe an idea.
And I just want to say, we say textbooks here, or it says that, but we will use it also for materials like a welding.
I consider, I could add to the language
Sure.
textbooks and materials, but I would say anything that a student would need in order to actually be able to take a community college class that they can't afford to buy, we could use these funds to pay for that, to give them true access.
And you're seeing that Tri-County would notify us of those expenses, or is the student going to have to?
We would have.
What's going to cost me an extra $150, and then bring you some sort of bill or receipt, or have you thought about that at all yet? Sorry.
So we kicked it around a little bit last week, and the easiest thing would be for the kid to buy the stuff and then come to us with the receipt, and then we reimburse the family. The problem with that is they may not have the money up front to be able to do it, which brings us back to the original problem. So I think in a previous district that I worked in, we were able to work something like this out with the community college. So there's a way to do it. I just have to, Shelley's going to have to contact their business department and we can figure it out. But there's a way to do it.
And this is only for those in need, or is this going to be open to every student?
Well, now then that's adding a little complication because then we have to define what need is.
And that's what, yeah.
Right.
That's
So we could entertain that of coming up with a definition if the board wanted to do that, or we could just say it's for any kids taking community college classes.
Okay.
That would be at the pleasure of the board and what you approved the use of funds for.
And your funds, you can do this like you do with scholarships when they're handing out also. Like you said, that what if the parents or the kid can't afford to pay ahead of time, and therefore Tri-County or whoever can contact Shelley and she can write checks or whatever.
Correct. Because I mean, a math textbook's $100. A welding helmet's probably $200. I would have to admit my ignorance on that. I don't know how much a welding helmet costs, but I bet it's not cheaper than $200. So it adds up quick.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess maybe what I'm hearing is that we kind of hash out some more of these details over the next month and revisit this in October. Is that-
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Very
So
good.
Ms. Beck as a first motion and Strongbow as a second.
I think I didn't really hear it as a motion.
No, I
Okay.
heard it. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Very good. All in favor of revisiting this next month? All right. Thank you, guys. So the next item.
So the last action item on the action agenda is required by state law 2021-130, which is a vote on the current face covering policy, which is option A that I shared with you last month. We are required by law now to vote on this each month. So it's just, I'm recommending that we stick with what we have for now. I know our numbers have improved. I think they will continue to improve. But I guess my recommendation would be that we stick with what we've got for another month and then see where we are in October. But of course, it's the board's pleasure to choose option A or option B at any time.
So, any comments, discussion, questions, or just a motion to stay where we are?
Yeah, I feel comfortable with what Mr. Cole is recommending. Just, I don't want to regress from the progress we are. I feel like we are meeting.
So is that your motion?
I'll make a motion.
Yep. I mean, and I forgot, Dr. Shook as well, Adrian, could you flip that to the next slide? This was just an update to our data. This is sort of the baseline. So first day of school, kind of where we were. This is where we are now. So for 2 straight weeks now, we've gone down in every category, which I'm excited about. We still have 104 as a total number of students and staff isolated due to quarantine. There was a question earlier on about, the fact like a 12.7 students per staff member as far as quarantined. One of the issues that we've had recently is that, and this is, I hesitate to even say this because of how confusing the quarantine protocols are. But the masking protection protocol does not apply the same way to adult to student exposure. That was not taken into account into the research for whatever reason. So when we have a staff member that tests positive, we pretty much have to quarantine the whole class, particularly if it's at the elementary or primary school, because those classes are so small and so interactive. Most of the time they've been around a kid for 15 minutes or longer inside of 6 feet at some point throughout the day or cumulatively throughout the day. The most recent issues we've had have been adult positives to students. And so in that case, when you've got, pretty much in elementary school, 15 to 18 kids per class, that's the reason why that percentage has gone up. I'm hopeful that that's going to turn around as well in the next couple of weeks. We will see. But I still think it's cause to celebrate that every one of our numbers have gone down in every category for 2 weeks in a row. And so I'm hopeful that by October, hopefully we can make some adjustments, and then maybe in November make some further adjustments. We'll see.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cole. So we have a motion from Ms. Crawford that we continue on under the current protocol as it is. So is there a second to that motion? Mr. Caldwell, second. All in favor? Thank you. And next we have approval of the consent agenda. So there's a couple items under there. Minutes from August 23rd and September 7th. And then the policy updates that were there from last week. So,
And stuff you have copies in you've had copies in your Google Drive, and then you also have hard copies in your folder of the previous board meeting minutes for August 23rd and then the September 7th special session that you had. And then those policies for action were on the agenda for first read in August and September 7th. Those are all updates to existing policies from the School Boards Association. There are no new policies there.
So is there any comments, questions, or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda as it's presented.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Ms. Beck, a second.
I'll second it.
Ms. Crawford, all in favor? And now I will entertain a motion that we go into closed session.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Jones, Mr. Caldwell, second. All in favor? Thank you.